Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Conversation with Morgan Adamski, Chief Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, NSA. Now, please welcome INSA Vice President for Policy, Bishop Garrison.
Good morning and welcome to our program. Today we're pleased to host one of our community's top leaders. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, and we really hope that you do, please submit them to the question box just to the right of your screen. We have nearly 400 registrants, today for this program, so I will do my best to get as many of your questions in as I can. We are pleased to welcome members of the press for this call. So just as a reminder that this program is being recorded and it will be on the record. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Patrick Marcus, Corporate Executive Vice President and Sector President, Intelligence Portfolio for Blue Halo, who will introduce our speaker. Over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Bishop, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Blue Halo, I'd like to start by thanking INSA for the work that they do to advance collaborative solutions to our community's most pressing challenges. I would also like to say that we're very proud to be partnering with INSA as the host sponsor for this morning's event. As a purpose-built company in the community providing industry-leading capabilities in the domain of space, counter-UAS, autonomous systems, AML, and cyber, Blue Halo is also fortunate to be a proud partner with NSA, working together to provide the nation with solutions to the most complex challenges we face in cyberspace and security. Very pleased to introduce today's speaker, Morgan Adamski, Chief of NSA Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. In this capacity, Morgan is responsible for leading complex and groundbreaking initiatives for NSA cybersecurity, specifically focused on co-creating cybersecurity tradecraft through industry collaboration to change the way we secure the nation. Most recently, as Deputy Strategic Mission Manager, Ms. Adamski led NSA cybersecurity efforts to build bidirectional analytical relationships with private sector partners providing cybersecurity services to the defense industrial base. She's been at the forefront of NSA's computer network defense, computer network exploitation, and cyber analysis mission for more than a decade. So please join me in welcoming Morgan Adamski.
Hi, thank you, Patrick, for that nice introduction. I'm really excited to be here with Bishop today, and thank you for sponsoring this session.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Morgan. We can only imagine how busy your schedule is these days, so we're always grateful to have someone of your caliber and your expertise come aboard to speak to us and speak to industry about your thoughts on some of these key issues. And before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this, I also wanted to say I heard you were at our gala on Friday, and I heard that you enjoyed it. It was a celebration of the legacy of Lieutenant General Vincent Stewart, who unfortunately passed earlier this year. So I just want to get any thoughts you had on the festivities there, and just thank you again for joining us.
Yes, it was an absolutely fantastic event. It was really well done. It was a fantastic way to honor and demonstrate the legacy. And so I just, it was beautifully done. It was fantastic to have a lot of professionals come together and be able to share stories of him and just how much they appreciated his leadership style, his mentorship, and the opportunities they afforded him. So it was a great event, one that I hope to attend in the future again, and be able to kind of just continue to honor the great individuals in the intelligence community.
Yeah, and we would be absolutely happy to have you again. And just to kind of pivot off of that, so you also joined us back in December of 2021 as a guest speaker. For those who weren't with us for that particular event, can you tell us a bit more about the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, its mission, and just how it's evolved since that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are not familiar, NSA's Cybersecurity Directorate was stood up in October 2019. The pandemic hit about 5 or 6 months later, but really our goal with building that organization and bringing together bringing together the individuals who understood the nation state cyber actors, their activities, their tactics, techniques, and procedures, and pairing them with individuals who understood the defensive side of the mission, right? The weapons platforms, the critical networks that we're trying to protect, so that they could have a really deep, rich conversation on the type of mitigation guidance we need to put in place to prevent and eradicate cyber threats from all of these critical networks. And in doing that, the main part of the conversation that we realized when we built CSD is that we needed to build an organization, a center, that could directly collaborate with the private sector to help us connect those dots. What do we know about the actors? How do we talk to the people that build that technology, that build those systems, so that they can better describe to us what the vulnerabilities may be, so that we can have a more fulsome conversation? And so that was the origin of the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. The doors opened in December 2020, which was solar winds for many of us in the cybersecurity community. So it was a very operationally focused time to bring together the private sector and the US government to better understand the threat and the very large scale mitigation effort that needed to take place. When I spoke to you, it was a year later in December 2021, and I think we were still in full sprint mode. At that time, we really had about 100 partners. We were still working through our operational model. We were still trying to figure out what capabilities we could leverage to better share information that was actionable, timely, and unique with our private sector partners. But really what the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center is, it is a shift in the way that NSA is operating and sharing information with private sector partners to enable real-time defense. It is a shift internally to NSA to get us more comfortable to share those insights and that technical expertise directly with the people who can use it. It is a organization that is operating almost entirely in an unclassified environment. So for those of you that have not heard that often, NSA in an unclassified environment, real time. And we also, the key part of the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center is we exist outside the fence line. So for those of you that are looking behind me, I have windows and sunshine. I am not in a SCIF or in a classified environment. And really that's critical for us because we wanted to be in a place that our industry partners could come to, sit down with our analysts and have real conversations about what we're seeing on each other's networks and what we understand from the foreign space about nation state actors. So now fast forward 2 years, we have quadrupled our industry partners. So we communicate with over 400 industry partners through 300 collaboration channels 24/7, any given day. We have had a lot of public announcements in terms of cybersecurity advisories where we've been able to come out and say Cybersecurity Collaboration Center in conjunction with our industry partners have been able to determine that these adversaries are actively targeting this technology. You most likely saw that with our cybersecurity advisory on the PRC activity in the Hunt Guide that came out to find PRC actors actively targeting critical infrastructure. And so that was recently released where we were able to name about 12 industry partners that actively contributed to the input in that advisory. So we've come a really long way. It's been a great mission. We are still evolving, but I think that we've seen significant strides in what our industry partners are able to bring to bear, but also what we're able to empower them to do.
Yeah, and you've laid out so much there in that that you've been able to do even in that short amount of time. And you talk about info sharing, you talk about operations. Well, can you tell us a bit more about your role as director, and then particularly what your top priorities are? What some of the major lessons learned are from a lot of these the operational focus and info sharing focus that you've mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I've been the director for close to 3 years here through all of the evolution of the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. What I would say is that operational priorities constantly change. We're constantly dealing with the next threat, the next issue, the next vulnerability. What we really are focused on here at the Collaboration Center is scale, right? How do we scale what we're doing here to better impact and secure networks in the US across the nation as quickly as possible. So when you talk about the defense industrial base, which is one of our key focuses because we support the Department of Defense as the sector risk management agency for the DIB, there are 300,000 DIB companies. That is a very large number. I cannot communicate with 300,000 DIB companies on any given day. And quite honestly, the information that I'm sharing, the capabilities, that's not going to be able to be used by everyone. And so we had to take a different approach. And so we have a three-prong approach here at the CCC to achieve scale in terms of what we are sharing with our private sector partners. So first and foremost, we are trying to work with the best and biggest cybersecurity companies who have the broadest reach to protect the most companies at once. So what does that mean? Your internet service providers, your cloud providers, your content delivery, your network device, the entire ecosystem of the technology providers that underpin the defense industrial base and national security systems and US critical infrastructure. We work with them so that if we share critical information with them, context as well as indicators, signatures, various, anything that helps them on the cyber defense side, they can take that information, validate it, create their own signatures for their own platforms and deploy it, and they protect billions of endpoints worldwide when they do that. We don't say you have to limit what you're doing to just protect the DIB in the US. We say use this to protect your entire customer base. And so that's one of the main ways that we focus on scale. The second thing that we are doing is that we are funded by the Department of Defense to offer free cybersecurity services to anyone with an active DoD contract or access to non-public information. Why does that matter? Most of these services, such as protective DNS, for those that are not familiar, which is the phone book of the internet, essentially make sure you're going to google.com when you actually type that in, and our malicious actors don't redirect you to somewhere else. Why does that matter? NSA is able to take their insights, their access to foreign intelligence, their understanding of what adversaries are doing, and they're able to provide that to commercial providers who are providing these services to all the companies enrolled. So if I see a malicious domain being used across the world by one of our nation state actors, and I know that our commercial provider may not know about it or may not have it on their list to block, I can give that to them. They put on the list to block and they protect all the companies enrolled. So these are NSA enriched cybersecurity services. The last thing we have on scale, and by the way, trying to get up to as many companies enrolled into that as possible that fit that criteria of active DoD contracts, so anyone can contact us and get enrolled right away. The last piece is we are securing future technology through our work in standard development organizations worldwide. And what that means is new technology like 5G, 6G, Internet of Things, AI, ML, any standard development bodies, we are actively participating in them to author and submit standards to secure that future technology. So we're dealing with the threats of today, we're trying to deal with the issues of tomorrow, but we really are securing the technology of the future.
Fantastic. And I'm so surprised you don't have the ability to speak to 300,000 different points of contact yourself at any one particular time. That's crazy. As director, you can't do that. So, but kind of taking that as a really salient point, you've already hit on this a bit, but can you go a little bit more in depth about the role of the partnership, or role partnerships have played in fostering the effective collaboration between government and the private industry? You really, I think, hit the nail on the head on a lot of this for some of our listeners here today. But what more can industry do to support the greater cybersecurity collaborative effort between NSA and the IC?
Yeah, I think one of the main things, that I've heard, and I've really engaged in a lot of conversations on this over the last 3 years. Public-private partnerships is not something new. It's something that's been talked about. There are all different flavors and types of public-private partnerships for different purposes, and there always should be. But at times, there's always been a complaint that it's one-sided. Right? Sometimes it is just the government pushing out information that doesn't have any context, or other times it's industry pushing information into the government and they don't know where it goes. It's a black hole. When you think about operational collaboration, which is the evolution of public-private partnerships and what we do here at the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, it is an active conversation. It is an investment in terms of we've got to put skin in the game from a national security agency perspective, just as industry has to put skin in the game in terms of talking about what they're seeing on their networks and what they're tracking. When we think about what has fostered effective collaboration, it is trust, it is transparency, and it is humility. And I can't emphasize the trust piece enough. I find that our industry partners, especially the ones that participate here at the CCC, are phenomenal about leaning forward. They want to support national security interests. They want to defend US critical infrastructure. They want to protect their customers. But they do a lot of that work sometimes on the side. They do it in addition to their day jobs. They try to find the things that the government needs to better help them protect those critical networks. And so when they provide that information to them, I want to be able to protect that information. I want to protect their equities, their proprietary information, their customer, their company interest. And so I've got to be able to protect that in a way that makes them feel comfortable. Transparency. One of the most effective things that I've learned over the last 3 years is that you have to have honest conversations about your priorities. We have industry partners that are really concerned about specific threats, so they want to focus on a specific technology. But if I don't have NSA resources against that right now, or if I'm focusing somewhere else, got to be able to tell my partners that, because if I just don't answer them, or they think I don't provide anything back, they may not think I care. It's not that I don't care. I'm just trying to balance in terms of what we're putting resources against at any given day. And then last part is humility. Uh, NSA, we're still teaching a lot of our workforce that it's okay to engage in these conversations in a low side environment, an unclassified environment. We are learning how to do that with specific technologies. Obviously, capabilities is a key part of a lot of this engagement. And NSA needs to be familiar with what commercial capabilities are available. What is industry using today? What's the technology they're most familiar with? And then we have to use those, not something that NSA built from the ground up. And so a little bit of that is learning and patience, and that all plays into humility, that we all just have a lot to learn from each other.
Absolutely, and I think that's broadly for all parts of government. It's broadly for society. We all have the opportunity to really gain a lot of input and information, just trying to hear one another out as we look to build these collaborative efforts out more thoroughly. Excuse me. With that said, we're going to take a question now from the from our group here, from the audience. One in particular from Katie Linhan. She asked something that we've heard a few times when we've had CISA, we've had folks from the Office of National Security Director on, the National Cyber Director on as well, that have discussed these cyber warriors that NSA plans to hire and how we're trying to build out the cybersecurity workforce. So her question is, are the 3,000 cyber warriors NSA plans to hire intended to be more on the government staffer side? Are they going to be contractors, or will it potentially be a mix of both? Can you speak to that a little bit?
So I think when we say the 3,000, just to clarify, right, that is a number that is at NSA large, it is CSD specific. We are all trying to hire. I think when you talk about, cybersecurity, to me, is not just a skill set, it's a mindset. And you've got to have people from all different backgrounds to execute it. So those are government employees that we are hiring, but we are also looking at ways to augment and build up our contract workforce as well. There's a lot of expertise there, a lot of historical knowledge on how to get the mission done. And so I think across the board, to include our military counterparts, and how do we leverage academia, and how do we get more interns in? We are looking at everything possible right now to build that cybersecurity workforce. So we are taking advantage of anything that's out there to answer that question a little bit more directly.
Fantastic. And so that's actually a good question for us to kind of come back to some other pieces that we've heard from some of your other colleagues in government. So can you elaborate a little bit more on the concept of secure by design and explain its significance and modeling your approach when we're discussing these partnerships with the private sector?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. When you talk about things like secure by design, that's technology products built in a way that protects against malicious actors successfully gaining access to devices and data. Secure by default, which is closely associated to it, is when a product comes to you right out of the box and doesn't need any modifications to fix it. So absolutely makes sense, right? High level principle. It's all something we're striving towards, something that we're going to actively pursue. It definitely gets complicated and complex when you talk about how do you actually make that a real thing when it gets down to implementation. And I know that's a lot of the conversations we're having with our private sector and US government counterparts right now. For NSA in particular, in the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, right, we play into this in a very critical way for national security systems in particular. What I would offer to you, for those of you that are out in the commercial technology space, if you are not familiar, it's definitely something you might want to look into. We run the National Information Assurance Partnership here at the CCC, also known as NIAP. They oversee all of the security evaluations for products that want to be certified to be used in national security systems. So if you're looking for a way to get technology into national security systems in the US government, NIAP is the way to get your product certified. They have been a historical program and long running for a really long time. Through NIAP, we are supporting a shift in mindset, secure to market instead of first to market, right? So if your product is deemed secure, then it's able to be used in national security systems. So that's one key way that we're playing into that secure by design and default principle, is the fact that we are certifying those products by design, by default, to help them better be used. And if you're certified in national security systems, that's a pretty good gauge of whether or not you're in critical infrastructure as well. Also, the fact that we are participating, and I mentioned this earlier, in all of those standards organizations, is so that we can actually get that big, large scale technology that is being built by commercial providers to say, here are the cybersecurity standards that need to be set and the protocols that need to be followed in this technology to ensure that it is secure. So we are playing in that future aspect of all the future technology space as well. So there is a lot of participation in those conversations. And that's kind of how we're playing into right now, as well as supporting our CISA and various US government counterparts as they think about how to implement all of these principles.
And that's fantastic. And just laying it out that way in secure to design, default, secure by default, and then secure to market are really clear and concise ways of kind of laying out the importance of the cybersecurity aspects of this, especially when we look at the rise of new AI technologies and a lot of the Internet of Things technologies. They're continuing to be more interconnected in the way they operate internally. So a question for this, are there any particular organizations within the private sector right now that you consider to be pioneers in adopting some of these concepts, the secure, in any one of them or a grouping of them, whether it's secure by design or default or to market? Are there any organizations that are really doing it well right now?
Yeah, so it's we don't really talk about
And now
specific
without putting you too
organizations.
much on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. What I would offer is that, different solutions work for different companies and different technologies and different workspaces, to be completely honest with you. If you know anything about the Department of Defense, we have a lot of niche programs and we need specific technologies and we need them modified for specific uses, right? So it's hard for me to say there's a specific vendor or company that's leading here. I think that there are a ton of companies that are paying attention to the conversation and how they are starting to look at how they would potentially implement it and do their due part in that conversation and kind of secure by design all of their future technology aspects of it. I think one way to look at it, as I mentioned earlier, is to look at NIAP, what technologies they're securing, who's submitting evaluations, and what products are certified. That's one way to say, okay, who's really focusing in on how do we secure our products for future use, especially if they're going to be certified for national security systems.
So, I guess one more follow-up question to that. What challenges may exist as more organizations are looking to adopt this secure by design, secure by default approach, and what can be done to mitigate some of these issues? Particularly, as you mentioned, when you're talking about DoD, you have such a large grouping, a plethora, if you will, of different companies of various sizes dealing in a lot of these different systems. So what can be done, in your opinion, to help mitigate some of these challenges?
Yeah, so for those of us in the cybersecurity business, right, we always find that it's difficult to have the conversation. What is the return on investment when you're investing in cybersecurity upgrades and advancements with the executive board and your CEO board? It really is a decision that has to be made in the C-suite and executive leadership, that technology manufacturers are going to take ownership at that level to put their consumer safety first. Right? We want to make that change. We want to be a key player in this space, and we want our technology to be secure for our customers. So we're going to make that executive change to really focus on that. And sometimes that can take an initial investment up front to really make that shift. Also, it's really important, all the international conversations that are happening. So not just on the US side, but our technology providers that are coming from other parts of the world, that they make those same investments in keeping technology safe as we talk about what's integrated into our US critical infrastructure. One last recommendation I would make is the use of the Secure Software Development Framework. So that's NIST 800-218. So that's a good way to talk about, okay, how are we going to look at what are the requirements for me to build that safe software? What's the framework that I can follow, and how can I implement it, right? There's a lot of good information out there. Sometimes it can be hard to find. We're going to try to do a better job to integrate that and make it an easy checkbox for people, but it is going to take an investment of people just getting smart on what are the requirements and how can I play.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that kind of shifting just ever so slightly, so what are some of the most just pervasive threats to our cybersecurity, and what measures are being taken by the CCC to help deny these threats as we continue to talk about the security by design piece, secure by default, and all of the private-public partnership pieces, aspects that go into this? Well, what are some of these threats that exist, and how are you folks working with industry and within government to help deny them?
Absolutely. China is the pacing threat for the National Security Agency. It is a key focus for us when it comes to cybersecurity and the threats that pose, not only just the threat of theft of our intellectual property, but just in general, how are they looking at how we're integrating technology? And because we want to ensure, right, we're actually protecting that US IP, and just securing the networks and the military systems and the things that we really have the cutting edge on, and that we're building great things. We want to make sure we maintain that military advantage. Um, we at the CCC spend a lot of time having threat-based conversations, right? Here is what we know about the adversaries, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Here is what we know about context, what they're hoping to accomplish, what they're hoping to target, what they're hoping to steal. A lot of their strategies, their out-year strategies from a PRC perspective, are public. So you can research them and understand what technology they're interested in. But that's the key point that I had made earlier, right? When it comes to the National Security Agency's value add, it is better understanding what the key nation state threats are, what their TTPs are, what they're doing on any given basis, where they're trying to go. And then lastly, better understanding how to protect against it. And so I think that's where the CCC plays a key role. Obviously, the secondary threat that we're concerned about is Russia cyber threats. Saw a huge uptick in that in terms of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Continuing to see those type of threats and focus, not just on information gathering, but also disruptive and destructive threats in that region. So trying to learn a lot about that to make sure that what we're seeing in that region, we actually protect US critical infrastructure from it as well. So trying to make sure we transfer that knowledge as quickly as possible to the US critical infrastructure owners. Also continue to focus in on Iran and North Korea. Those are the other two,
No
of
shortage
course.
of threats is what you're telling me.
Yeah, all of them. And then lastly, you can't have a conversation about threat without talking about ransomware, right? So I think that our FBI and CISA counterparts have done a phenomenal job of releasing a lot of cybersecurity advisories recently, talking about ransomware actors, the capabilities, the certain techniques and malware and pieces that they're using to get that out as quickly as possible. So I think paying attention to that, and you can just see it in the uptick in the cybersecurity advisories that are coming out of the US government. We are trying to share as much information as possible to the people who need it most.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And kind of speaking of this, I want to go to our second audience question here. And you hit on this a bit earlier when you discussed the defense industrial base, but Vivian Wilson asked, what is NSA doing to work with small businesses, which comprise most of the DIB, of the defense industrial base, to enable them to implement the same high level of cybersecurity practices that so many of the large prime contractors, given their size, are able to implement? Given their size and resources, they have the ability to do it a little bit easier.
Yeah, so a couple of different avenues, right? So first and foremost, I previously mentioned the fact that we are working with the Department of Defense. We're funded for a lot of those cybersecurity services. What I will tell you about our cybersecurity services, and by the way, those are done in conjunction with DC3 and the DoD's Chief Information Office. If you're familiar with their DIB cybersecurity program, we actually now have worked out a way in which all of our programs are complementary and they cover down on a lot of space. If you're ever interested in hearing more about that, I think there's a DIB Cybersecurity Summit coming up soon. But we those services actually focus on the ones that NSA supports, the most common attack vectors that our adversaries are taking advantage of. So that's what we're trying to help, and our focus is small to medium-sized businesses getting enrolled in those services as quickly as possible. We are also looking at ways and talking to programs like Project Spectrum out of the Department of Defense office, where they offer a lot of cybersecurity awareness training to help small to medium-sized businesses just determine what do we need, what are the requirements, and how do I get access to this information. Separately, we also have relationships with the National Defense ISAC, so our information sharing analytical community as well, so that if you are part of ND ISAC, you also benefit from all of the NSA sharing as much as humanly possible too. So, we're looking at all the ways, as I mentioned, scale is our focus. How do we get all of this information out as quickly as possible to the people that can use it, not just the DIB primes? While, those are critical relationships for us here at NSA is also the DoD. We also recognize that they are supported by lots of subs, and we want to make sure we help those subs as much as possible as well, because that's where the adversaries tend to target the most.
Yeah. And with that idea kind of in mind, we've already kind of given a short introduction to the idea of artificial intelligence. We're continuing to see it rise throughout society. We're seeing more systems, more tools. We're seeing just a significant increase of it overall. How is NSA and CCC looking to leverage and, when necessary, protect against the use of artificial intelligence tools and systems?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is it's a hot topic right now. You can't swing a bat without talking about it in the cybersecurity community. It was like a buzzword in at RSA this year at various cybersecurity conferences. So it will be a topic for a while.
Yeah.
It is obviously something that people want to better understand. But here's the fact of the matter for me: it's fantastic we're having this conversation. Right. And so let me talk about, there are 3 priorities right now from a national security agency perspective when it comes to AI, generative AI. It is something that we've been focusing on for a while, tracking the technology. And so we're ahead of it, but we've got to keep up with it. So here's what I will tell you is that, first and foremost, from an NSA perspective, how are our adversaries picking up on this technology and how do they intend to use it? Right. So there's that malicious piece that you touched on. So we are, putting a lot of resources and efforts to better understand what's nation state activity related to AI. How do they intend to use it? What are the potential targets? Secondly, how do we as defenders use AI to better help us do our jobs? And what that means is like not just a whole AI cybersecurity, cyber defense program. It is improved processes and workflows, which means, if there are opportunities to use AI to better scan networks, to better understand vulnerabilities, to determine a patching strategy, how can that benefit us, and how can it benefit our partners? And then lastly, thinking about what can be done in a malign way to these things in technology that rely on AI, right? So the underpinning aspect of it. And so that's another key focus we want to think about in terms of threats. How do we have trust in it? Trust and reliability and availability, obviously, and what can be done to disrupt the usual operation of it and defeat it as a capability. And so there's a lot of different threads here at NSA. We have a lot of different expertise that we're playing into this conversation. I know there's always goodness to be concerned about the technology, but there's also benefits from it. So we've just got to figure out how to better leverage it and just understand what it's capable of doing so that we can protect if there is a risk and mitigate it effectively.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and I know we've been bouncing around a bit. So, just as the
Okay.
questions come in and where the conversation goes the way it is, I want to go back to one thing we talked about earlier when we had a question from the audience about cyber warriors. One piece we didn't hit on that are the characteristics, the skill sets, the experiences you're looking for in potential candidates as you're to best fit the evolving challenges. Just like you mentioned, there are no shortage of threats, whether they come from the systems like AI systems and tools, or whether they come from state actors, even non-state actors. So what are you looking for in those candidates? And then what are the most appealing prospective candidates? Excuse me. What's the most appealing thing about working at NSA that you would talk to them about?
Yeah, so let's talk about the characteristics, right? So competition is very fierce in the cybersecurity community. We obviously have a lot of opportunities in different, whether it's industry or in the US government. Our main focus is how NSA really sets themselves apart from others. And I can talk a little about what that means. So when you come to cybersecurity, I've been in the cybersecurity business for close to 15 years at the National Security Agency. It is the mission. It is the purpose, it is the drive in better wanting to better protect US critical infrastructure and being at the forefront of that, right? We have exquisite capabilities here at NSA and insights, but the people really are our superpower. People who want to be creative, they want to solve complex problems where there has never really been a solution. They want to look at technology that is just so far in the future, no one cares to want to think about or understand, but we have, the most PhDs in the US government in the world in terms of complicated, like who works for NSA. It's quite magnificent. There are often times that I get a little overwhelmed. Also, I will tell you, we give our employees here, especially in the cybersecurity directorate, the opportunity to prevent and eradicate threats in a way that, oftentimes when you're at a US government or industry partner or a defense industrial base, you're just constantly seeing threats hit your network and you're dodging and ducking and securing as much as possible. We get to go back at them. And that is very different than most other people. NSA, able to look at our adversary networks all the way into protecting US critical infrastructure. That is the full cycle. And so I think that that is a key aspect of our work. And then the other part of it is that, NSA is not subject to the volatile market. We are a US government agency. There's ability to be stability in terms of your work, job, work-life balance, all of those type of things. One aspect that I will tell you about the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center that is unique and different as part of that culture change for NSA is that our employees are able to telework, right? And that's huge for NSA and the intelligence community. They're able to not just be located in the Fort Meade, Maryland area. They can travel, they can work in different parts of the US and be able to still accomplish their mission because a lot of that work is done in an unclassified environment. And so I think that there are key aspects that the agency is changing and evolving to as we look at what's happening in the cybersecurity community, but there will always be a sense of purpose and mission that needs to be fulfilled. And that's the biggest reason I see people come back also that have left and gone to the private sector.
Fantastic. So with these remaining minutes, we have a little under 2 minutes now. We want to go ahead and we're getting a lot of live questions in. Not surprising at all. So I'm going to do my best to try to engage on as many of these as possible. So one that really goes back into this idea of prospective candidates. Joshua Martin asks, how can students help in this fight right now? He's currently a student at Strayer University, and they have a cyber team that conducts research. What is it that they can do now to help support the mission?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I just want to make sure I pull my note for you. So, first and foremost, there's the NSA's Gen Cyber program. So it's about 160 programs co-funded by the National Science Foundation in 47 states. So there's a lot of opportunities through our academic outreach and what universities we're partnering with to have proposals to say, I want to work as part of these NSA programs. I want my team, my expertise. If you have a group of students working on things, there's a certain project that you want to work and kind of submit and work with us. So there's opportunities such as that. There's the National Centers of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity. So over 410 academic institutions that NSA partners with in this space in conjunction with FBI and CISA and DoD. These programs contribute graduates to the cyber workforce. So usually it's fantastic because we have the academic and students actually build these programs. They pitch them to the government. They show the fantastic talent and work, and then we try to hire and recruit you. So it's an added benefit, right? So there's both Gen Cyber and the CAE programs right now in terms of academic outreach where people can really start to contribute to the mission.
Fantastic. So with that said, we have another one from Brett McCongle, who asks, what is the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center's process for evaluating software supply chain threat analysis tools? That's very specific.
It is. That's a great question. So there's a couple of different things. So, process for evaluating supply chain type tools and capabilities. We do that in a number of different ways. So first and foremost, there is aspects of the National Information Assurance Partnership that does this evaluation in terms of products, specifically if there's going to be products in national security systems. But I would also encourage you to look at is that the CCC is home to the Enduring Security Framework, ESF, which is a historical program, but they most recently published some documents on supply chain, both for developers and practitioners. So those products are actually meant, that is a deep analysis done by both industry and the US government on what the threats are, but how you can protect against them. I would really point you to the ESF products. That's a lot of the work that comes out of the CCC and NSA and CISA and our counterparts there.
Okay. Fantastic. I think we're going to take a couple more questions here, and then we'll close out. Jared Gazak, excuse me. I apologize, Jared, if I mispronounced your name. He asks, who can vendors reach out to engage with CCC?
Yep, so if you go to cybercenter.nsa.gov, you will actually see all the information on the CCC. We are a very external facing organization. You'll see the NIAP program if you're looking to get your product certified, but you'll also see the Defense Industrial Base program, which is enrollment in our services, as well as a mailbox to contact us if you just want to be a partner on the collaboration front.
Fantastic. And this will be our last question to close us out. I think this will be a pretty in-depth one. It comes from one of our reporters here today from Voice of America, Jeff Selden. He asked, we've heard repeated warnings that China is likely to launch disruptive or destructive cyber attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure if conflict erupts between Beijing and Washington, D.C. To what extent is the code or malware needed for such an attack already lurking in U.S.-based systems? And are there any adversaries capable of launching such attacks?
Yeah, so, that's a fantastic question. You're pointing to code and malware, but what I would just offer to you is there's a pervasive threat from PRC cyber actors against U.S. critical infrastructure. People, our network administrators at private sector companies see that constantly. The annual threat assessment released by ODNI stated the fact that the PRC had the potential opportunity and ability to do that type of disruptive, destructive work against critical infrastructure. So what I would offer is that it is something that we're concerned about. We need to pay attention. It's not necessarily just a specific piece of codeware or malware that exists within our code or malware that exists within a network. It is just access and how pervasive that access is and how persistent that access is. So every activity should raise an alert to better understand, is that activity specific to something that may be intelligence gathering, or is that activity in a network that's not necessarily have any purpose for intelligence gathering, right? You better start, if you're a network administrator on a specific network or your network owner, better understanding if you have that happening against your network, why are they there? That's the intent question, right? And so we're hoping to facilitate and have more of those conversations to help people better understand it, but that's kind of our understanding of it right now.
Fantastic. Well, that is about all the time we have, Morgan. Any closing thoughts that you want to share as we leave everyone here this morning?
No, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me today. Hopefully the people that attended had learned a little bit more about the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. We're 3 years old. We are growing fast. A lot of opportunity for us to succeed, but we only succeed when we have investment both from industry as well as other U.S. government partners. It is really the collaboration and the conversation that has benefited us, and we'll continue to see great success there. So we're happy to talk about it.
Well, we are just so extraordinarily honored and happy to have had you this morning. Thank you for your insights. It was an incredibly informative discussion. We look forward to hopefully having you again in the future. Thank you to Blue Halo for sponsoring today's discussion, and for all of you online who are watching, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your wonderful questions. When the webinar ends, there will be a short survey that pops up. We ask that you take a few moments to complete it and just let us know how we did. We want to be able to continue to have these and continue to grow and make them better for you. So let us know your thoughts. Looking ahead on our schedule, on Tuesday the 20th, we will hold a special celebration, a breakfast in honor of the Honorable Charlie Allen's 65th year of extraordinary service to the nation. At the event, Charlie will be joined by INSA Chairwoman Tish Long for a wide-ranging conversation where he will reflect on the accomplishments, regrets, as well as his thoughts on current challenges and opportunities. It's supported by the Hayden Center and the Spy Museum, and this really promises to be a truly memorable and historic event. We return to our virtual programming with a special edition of our Coffee and Conversation program with Mike Vickers, former Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and again with INSA Chairwoman Tish Long. This will take place Thursday, June 29th. The discussion will focus on his recently released memoir, by all means available, Memoirs of a Life in Intelligence, Special Operations and Strategy. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic and fascinating conversation. And then finally, we want to remind everyone that on July 13th and 14th, we will hold our 10th Intelligence and National Security Summit in partnership with AFCEA International. We have a powerful speaker lineup ready to discuss the key issues facing our community, in addition to an exhibit floor full of innovative products and services for the intelligence community. We expect about 2,000 attendees to join us for this program. Details can be found at intelsummit.org. You can learn more about all of these programs and more about our organization at our website, www.insaonline. That's INSAonline.org. And that concludes this morning's program. We thank you all so much for joining us again, and have a wonderful day.